Good morning, everyone. Lots going on as usual. Today is Friday, October 17th, 2025. I'm getting some errors popping up on my stream, but it looks like I've actually got some viewers now and things are looking okay again. I don't know. We'll see how things go. I'm recording as usual, and we'll see how things go. SNC-Lavalin interference, covering up for Trudeau. The RCMP say they don't take marching orders from politicians, and Pierre Poilievre's dumb, a boo-boo. So, weird, right? It's a weird thing for them to say. So we'll look at that. China rises. China is putting pressure on the United Kingdom. They don't want the United Kingdom. The United Kingdom put brakes on that embassy that people were saying there was insider things and it was a big scandal. It's still a big scandal. Canada is saying, we're gonna have closer ties to China. What would be a good thing to do right now? Closer ties with China. That's the best thing to do right now. So I think that's pretty funny. And so that's what we're going to do. $24 billion waste on homelessness. This is in the United States, but I think that similar programs, similar waste happens regularly across all of our institutions. I hope I'm wrong about that, but I really think that that's actually what's going on. Just massive waste, and it's bureaucratic waste. And he goes through where they started looking at forensic accounting or something like this at all of the money going into homelessness. 5 years, $24 billion or something like that, and all wasted, all just gone on, I don't know if it's salaries or what, but fraud and just wild stuff. $24 billion. Like, that's a lot of money. Do you think you wouldn't have to have homeless people if these people weren't stealing all the money for the homeless people? Unbelievable. Ukraine, Russia's next on the list for peace. Trump says yes. So we'll see how that works out. And carbon taxes on food put in by the United Nations vote today. Yeah, there's like a vote coming up today. The United States is going to say no, but Canada, who's super good friends with the United States, et cetera, is totally going to agree and vote with the United States. No, they're going to vote with the United Nations and say, yes, we should definitely tax our people for carbon and send that to the United Nations. So look for a new tax soon for, global carbon tax. We don't pay enough carbon taxes in Canada, apparently. And Frexit. So France was looking over at Brexit and looking over at the United Kingdom. And I mean, it's no picnic in the United Kingdom, but they want out of the EU. And could this be the initial push for the total collapse of the EU as a governing body, as a meeting place that everybody goes to hang out and people just go back to doing things the way we used to do things? I don't know. We'll see. So there's lots to get to. Let's get to it. Sorry, I'm late this morning as well. There's all sorts of stuff I've got to get. There are all sorts of things I'm working on. So trying to juggle everything, right? Anyway, lots to get to. Let's get to it. First, we have to start with carbon taxes on food. Scott says, you can see in the corner of the pack here, carbon score on this. I don't know what this is. Raynor's something or other, and it's got 8.1. Eating this uses 8.1% of your daily dietary carbon allowance. Daily dietary carbon allowance. No, I don't think so. Oh, that's a swing and a miss. Not good. Daily. Who gets to set my daily dietary carbon allowance, and who gets to set how much food or whatever is each thing of percentage of my carbon allowance? Why is it 8% of my carbon allowance? That's a weird thing. Like, you could say this represents 4 carbon units or something like that for whatever, but you can't say, you don't know how much my carbon credit percentage is, my daily percentage is, right? Like 8%, screw your 8%. Like my carbon credits, I've got tons of carbon credits. So you can tell me how many units that thing costs, but you can't tell me as a percentage. It doesn't work like that. And so that's very strange, but they're going to try and backdoor this system, and I'm not going to use this system. I'm going to reject this system entirely, but they're going to try and backdoor this system and just allow it to grow up, and then you just have to deal with it, and they will deal with it just like they've dealt with the transgender issue in schools. You just run up against a brick wall. You can't talk to anybody about anything. They'll just continue moving forward with their plans while they ignore you, and the carbon stuff will be there. People will be using the carbon credits. This is eventually going to come to a head, but Demolition Man, the whole video or the whole movie, that's coming to real life before you know it. Mark Nixon says, Trump says no to the United Nations global carbon tax. He says, I am outraged that the International Maritime Organization is voting in London this week to pass a global carbon tax. The United States will not stand for this global green new scam tax on shipping and will not adhere to it in any way, shape, or form. We will not tolerate increased prices on American consumers or the creation of a new green scam bureaucracy to spend your money on their green dreams. Stand with the United States and vote no in London tomorrow. I fear, and we're going to find out. I think it probably happens, 10:30, 11 o'clock today. And it's 10 to 11 now. So I fear that we're going to see most countries say, yes, this carbon tax looks like a good idea. I don't know what more the United States can do to put a fly in the ointment of the climate change Green New Deal when there are so many other countries who are using that grift to back taxes, carbon taxes. The United Nations is using it. Everybody's got the data they need to move into the positions that they're in, pushing these taxes where the president says, this is a hoax. This is not necessary. We don't need to have green taxes. It's a green scam. They're going to use your money, new scam bureaucracy to spend your money on their green dreams. These things are, it's a scam. I don't know if we're going to be able to derail it, even with the United States and their clout at the UN. I mean, can they veto this? Can the United States veto this order? I don't know, but it seems like a very, very interesting situation because I believe that it is a scam, and I don't think they have the data to back it up. They've got cooked data and ClimateGate times. How many times did ClimateGate happen in the late 2000s and the early 2010s, right? Like there were a whole bunch of emails that were leaked, and it was clear this whole thing's just been cooked up. It's clear that this whole thing is fake, and the geoengineering is really what's going on, in my opinion. But that doesn't matter. Again, just like with the transgenderism in schools, they'll ignore you, implement their policies, and then just stand there and look dumb when you point out that you didn't want this. You articulated and wanted to meet with them to tell them all of the pitfalls of this, and now all of the things that you were trying to warn them about are happening. All the negative consequences are happening, and they don't care. And again, what we miss is that they don't care. Like they're going to do this anyway. It doesn't matter how bad it is. GPQ says, Trump says U.S. will not stand for this global green new scam on shipping. Yep. So will we? Right? Here's Tom, and he's somebody who is trying to speak truth to power with regards to this climate change thing. And he's sharing Bjorn's thing. Climate crash. Swedish youth lose interest in climate change. Dropped from their top issue in 2019 to their bottom half of 23 concerns behind health, education, and safety. So before, there were a whole lot of people really interested. Women were 51%, men were at 34%. Now women are at 15%, men are at 13%. They don't care. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. We're not gonna tax our way out of this. Whatever's happening. If we cut off money to pilots who are spraying crap in our skies, maybe that'll be a pathway to ending whatever's going on. But maybe not too, right? Everybody's worried about the disappearance of bugs and how dry our forests are and things like that. Some people say that's because of what they're spraying. I don't know. I have no idea. Plausible, but I don't know. CTV News says surging CO2 levels a sign Canada must resist climate backsliding. We've noticed that you don't believe, so we've amped up the fear in hopes that you believe again because you're so afraid that you think that we have the answers. No, absolutely not. And here is Chris, and Tamara Litch says, I'm just going to leave this here. And a CBS News report by Dan Rather warns that if we don't stop digging up ancient carbon and burning it, 25% Florida will be underwater. This broadcast was 43 years ago. It's bullshit. It's bullshit, and everybody knows it. And the government is using it in order to justify bad policies going forward, policies that make us all poorer. And instead of acknowledging that and fixing their policies, they want to censor the internet. I wish I was kidding. Darn. Man, Canada sucks these days. Ryan says, here's the media push for C8. So this is internet censorship. And see if you can hear where the media is getting their marching orders from. Okay. See if you can hear it in this broadcast. He's trying to claim cyber attacks are on the rise, and C8 is going to crack down on these cyber attacks. And one of the cyber attacks that's mentioned here is the PA systems of multiple Canadian airports having pro-Palestinian propaganda or whatever it is piped over their speaker system. And they're taking credit as a hack and all this other stuff. I mean, why not just go to old school speaker systems? Say you can't use computers to automate your overhead announcements. You have to use humans. Simple, right? Go back to analog technology, everybody. There's somebody sitting in the booth, right? And then you get the regional stuff with a nice accent and everything. Anyway, here's this guy claiming C-8 is necessary due to those cyber attacks and those cyber criminals that are very concerning. Here we go.
Canada has seen a troubling and steady rise in hate crimes in many communities from coast to coast. You two have reported on many of these incidents happening specifically here.
I'm shaking my head vigorously because he's terribly... Hey, they reclassified what hate crimes are. And now they're trying to say, oh yeah, hate crimes are happening all over the place. Hate crimes here, hate crimes there. Everything's a hate crime. And that's, again, trying to be used to justify a crackdown on hate. They're letting violent criminals out on bail. And they want to put people who say, hey, who say online, that man can't be a woman, right? Like get that person to put them in jail. We need more resources for that. That's what they're saying. And it's insane. It's insane. Anyway, here's this guy again. I don't mean to interrupt, but I couldn't stop vigorously shaking my head no, because I disagree with his position, because it seems so contrived.
In Toronto, a troubling surge specifically in anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, also with notable events around the world targeting groups for the race or ethnicity, putting many Canadian communities on high alert, as well as police departments around the country trying to combat acts of violence, vandalism, and intimidation, largely due to attacks on Jews and Muslims here in Canada and elsewhere. While stats can preliminary...
No mention of the burned churches. Mostly just attacks on Jews and Muslims? Really, CT.
Numbers show a drop in overall reported hate crimes from the first few months of this year to specifically the first quarter last year. There has been a steady surge in Canada over a number of years now. Reported incidents more than doubling since before 2020. Overall, the number of police reported hate crimes has increased for 6 years in a row, with a nearly 50% increase in reported hate crimes over just the past 2 years. And the federal government under pressure to stem the rising tide of hate, introducing new legislation.
Yes, there we go. There's a saleable story to tell you. The government needs to act to stem the rising, hate and stuff. It's like saying, oh, there's been an increase in speeding tickets, all you speed demons out there. And they forget to mention that they've dropped all of the speeds in the speed limits 20 kilometers an hour down to 30 kilometers an hour or 40 kilometers an hour on major roadways. And it's insane. And so has there been an increase in speeders, or have you changed the laws in order to facilitate a narrative that you're trying to build? I think it's the second one. Here's Radio First, Razor First, Radio First. And he says, he's responding to the Rolling Stone. And the Rolling Stone says more than 550 actors, directors, writers and musicians have teamed up to relaunch the Committee for the First Amendment, a group originally formed in 1947 during the Red Scare. The Red Scare is when there was a communist under every tree, and McCarthyism was doing it's been portrayed in movies that he was doing witch hunts. But as it turns out in 2025, now we know that he was 100% correct. He was looking for commies in the U.S. government, and he probably found a bunch, and they were like, we got to get rid of this guy. And they did. And then they made fun of him in the movies to the point where people think that he was a kook. But he was right. Like, he was 100% correct. I hate to be the one to tell you. If I'm the first one telling you this, welcome. But holy smoke, he was right. Razor First says, you forgot to mention that this group of 47 were a communist front group. Their lawyers were on the payroll of the Communist Party USA and funded by the Soviet Union. Humphrey Bogart, who was duped into supporting them, had to write an editorial apologizing when this was exposed. Whoopsie, right? So that's pretty funny. Rolling Stone is just absolute garbage. Everything that we once thought was credible and legitimate, Hollywood, magazines, anything, New York Times, anything that's long in the tooth that has been around a long time has been usurped and used not to help the people, not to help even really the owners of the New York Times. It has been used to push propaganda of the power of the day, right? And I don't even necessarily mean the US government or the government, because the power is above that, right? Every single nation is decided their own culture sucks and we need to import, the Middle East. I love IEDs and covered women. What? Like, it doesn't make any rational sense. It's insane. Here is what this guy's talking about, Bill C-8 and the coincidence of the pro-Palestinian cyber attack on the airports. Okay, 3 Canadian airports hacked on Tuesday, he says.
Turns out that the Kelowna airport wasn't the only airport that was hacked on Tuesday. Victoria and the Windsor Internationals were also broadcasting unauthorized audio over their PA system. And surprise, surprise, there's already a mainstream call for more robust cybersecurity measures and stronger punishment for those who support terrorist groups. It must be a coincidence that the Liberals are currently facing pushback on Bill C-8, a bill claiming to be about cybersecurity that's amending the Telecommunication Act to allow our government to turn off the internet of anyone they see fit. Don't be fooled. This is orchestrated. Turns out.
Yep. I think it is orchestrated. Things like this happen. They use it. It's a problem, reaction, solution. And tale as old as time. Like, problem, reaction, solution, just to get this little bill passed. Like, the problem is we have cyber attacks. Didn't you see the airport cyber attacks we just had? No, you didn't. We need to do another one. I mean, wait a couple of days and you'll have another example. Because I'm implying that they do them in order to justify the crackdown, which is, I think, what happens. Here is C-11, and I guess a minister said Bill C-11 makes the internet better. And what Bill C-11 does is brings streamers under the purview of the CRTC. And can you imagine, like, if the CRTC was able to regulate streamers and say, like, oh, Mark, your show's there's too many old stock Canadians in your show. You'll have to diversify the host or something like that. You know, keep your show exactly as it is, except for CRTC to be happy with it, you have to diversify the host. So keep your show, replace the host. Darn, right? So obviously I would use a Lima and hire somebody from Africa. Like, that's the only way to do it. And probably the government would have an instruction book for how to do that. I hope he's as articulate as I am. Antonio, maybe it would be in French now too. Antonio says, Liberals claim Bill C-11 makes the internet better. How does it make the internet better? And people are basically saying if they can't clearly explain how the internet is made better by this bill, then it's not necessary. And so I would say that it's not necessary. Here we go.
So that's a big question. Again, I would come back to our role with respect to C-11, and that is the implementation of the legislation. We're a quasi-judicial tribunal, so we are implementing the legislation that was given to us by Parliament.
So I understand that. I think you and I could probably agree that the definition of success in terms of the implementation of Bill C-11 would be to serve the Canadian public to a greater extent. So how does Bill C-11 do that?
So we are here to work in the public interest. So again, coming back to our role, we are here to ensure that we are putting in place or implementing a regime that has been given us to us by Parliament to make sure that we are including online streamers in the regulatory regime.
So again, the implementation of Bill C-11. The CRTC, I would imagine, is motivated by wanting to implement it in such a way that serves the intent of Parliament. And at the time, the minister said that it would make the internet better for Canadians. How are you implementing it in order to achieve that goal?
So again, and I would point to what my colleague, Mr. Shortlift, said. By implementing C-11, it does support the Canadian broadcasting system. It does offer choice to Canadians in terms of what they're able to watch, what they're able to consume. And obviously there's an economic perspective to that as well in terms of supporting the broadcasting system.
Yeah, she spoke for almost 2 minutes and said nothing at all. That's a skill. That's the only skill Canadian politicians have. Here is Jamie, and he's sharing how there's a documentary. I think there's a documentary. Is this a link to a documentary? There's more information with regards to connections to China and kickbacks and very concerning connections. And Donald Trump Jr. says the United States is in the middle of tough trade negotiations with China, and we have American elites acting as useful idiots for the Chinese Communist Party. So again, is this McCarthyism, or are there Americans acting as useful idiots? So a useful idiot is somebody who is making the argument for China without China necessarily influencing that, right? So people like Carney saying, oh, we're going to open up trade negotiations and things like that. Maybe he's actually more than a useful idiot, but people who are able to influence things, making China's argument, they'll just let them do that all day, right? So it's a crazy, crazy world. And I think that we have a lot of red flags to think that not only is Canada compromised by China, but so is England and maybe other places too. Maybe that's the core root of the problem, and we're not even close to addressing it, which would be terrible. Jamie says, exclusive report shadows over Ottawa and the United States, how the Chinese Communist Party hijacked Canada's government and the elite puppeteers pulling the strings in a bombshell revelation that could reshape North American geopolitics. Mounting evidence points to a deep infiltration of the Canadian government by the Chinese Communist Party, the CCP, with tentacles extending into the highest echelons of power. This isn't mere speculation. It's a web of covert funding, strategic alliances, and manipulative influence operations that have compromised Canada's sovereignty. At the center of this storm are key figures like Ian Bremmer of Eurasia Group, journalist Evan Solomon, former Trudeau advisor Gerald Butts, Liberal leader Mark Carney, and ex-Conservative minister John Baird. John Baird was also Poilievre's campaign manager way back when he was running for leadership, and then probably during the general election as well. And Chris was the one who pointed that out after this whole thing. Following the money trail reveals a pattern of elite self-enrichment masked as global cooperation, while media consultants like Eurasia Group peddle contrived expertise to deceive the public and advance hidden agendas. What was the spark for this expose? Appointed ex-post from Donald Trump Jr. earlier today, calling out American elites as useful idiots for the CCP amid tense U.S.-China trade negotiations. Trump Jr. highlighted Eurasia Group founder Ian Bremmer's presence in Beijing, schmoozing with lead trade negotiator Li Changgang, just as Washington ramps up pressure on Beijing. The United States is in the middle of tough trade negotiations with China, and we have American elites acting as useful idiots for the Chinese Communist Party, he wrote, quoting Bremen's own post about being in Beijing but not going rogue. This isn't isolated. It's part of a broader playbook where Western influencers whitewash CCP actions for personal gain. And then it goes deeper, but it's beyond the scope of today's podcast, and I've got to kill the stream soon, and I want to do the rest of these China things, so I'll kill the stream after this. Bernie says, bloody brilliant. She's responding to this article headline, and I don't know if it's Times UK or who it is, but they say China threatens Keir Starmer with consequences over the super embassy delay. So the super embassy was a big sticking point. There were people who were saying this is improper. We can't look into spying with this obvious conflict of interest because you're fast tracking this. There's all sorts of issues with the embassy, and the embassy being fast tracked the way it is putting pressure on the government because people are saying that there's insiders, and the government squelched some investigations into spying, saying that the Chinese aren't responsible and don't look into that anymore. Don't worry about it. This is closed. And people are worried about that too. And so there's a whole bunch of weird stuff going on with China. Bernie says, bloody brilliant. China warns Britain of consequences after Starmer delays its new London super embassy. Labour is about to discover its entire net zero strategy. Consumer product sector, industry, and even NHS supplies are all dependent on China. Right. So if China turns off all of the products, imagine if China turned off all of the products coming in from being manufactured there. Canada, there would be a bump, right? And that's putting it very mildly. And so China holds a lot of cards because we've offshored a lot of our production there. And because we've done that, same in Britain, they can push us around because we don't hold a lot of clout, right? Reuters is saying Canadian Prime Minister Carney told reporters that he expected to meet senior Chinese leaders in the coming month, and that Canada is restarting a broad engagement with Beijing. So everything's fine again, guys. China and Canada, Canada and China, bosom buddies, just like that 80s show, right? Here's Mark Carney.
Canada determining where can we trust the United States through ups and downs, and in what areas can we do that, and where should we have that exposure. It's a similar process with China. We are restarting broad engagement with China. We have a broader trading relationship with China. There are different levers that we have, or opportunities that we have for China in Canada. And we are in the process of having those discussions on a much broader range of issues than single sectors and single trades. Our foreign minister, Minister Anand, is arriving in Beijing basically as we speak, and will be meeting with her counterparts, and I expect to meet the senior Chinese leadership in the coming month or so, and we'll continue those discussions, and we'll see where the trade relationship evolves. Thank you.
Right. Very, very interesting. And there's interesting announcements with 1,000 new officers being hired and things like this, but they've already made these announcements. So they're recycling old announcements. It's weird. And the RCMP thing seems to be a show of power. This press conference has the RCMP in the background. They had one of the leaders of the RCMP answering questions about political influence. And, well, I've got some pushback on what he says there. So anyway, if you want the rest of the show, head over to CanadaPoly.com. If you don't, no problems. We'll catch you tomorrow. And for everybody else, one quick announcement before I go. I'm not sure I'll be able to do the kitchen table talk tomorrow because I have appointments and things that I have to keep. So I will find out for sure, or not tomorrow, Sunday. I'll find out for sure by Saturday, and I'll mention it. But I'll also be late tomorrow. Just things are happening. So it is what it is, but apologies about that. But we'll catch you tomorrow for sure. So thanks for watching.